As the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance continues tonight, neighbors say fear is still lingering in the area. Investigators say they're not ruling out the possibility that more than one person may be involved. Meantime, we're told the FBI is answering calls around the clock to 1-800-CALL-FBI tip line and reviewing submissions online. A reward of up to $100,000 from the agency remains in place for information leading to Nancy Guthrie's location or to the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in her disappearance. 88 Crime is also offering a reward now of $202,500. Monica Garcia joins us now live in the Catalina foothills with the very latest. And Monica, what is the latest today?
Sean, the latest is in regards to a Tucson couple who wishes to remain anonymous, who tells me that they have found two gloves less than a mile away from Nancy Guthrie's house, one appearing to have blood on it. And we did speak with them exclusively. And to give you an idea, where they found it is, again, less than a mile away from here, as soon as you pull out of this neighborhood right on Campbell Avenue. All of this happening, they tell us, on Wednesday at 10 p.m. The couple tells me they felt compelled to help because they live in the area. They say they decided to drive slowly down Campbell Avenue, searching with a lot of people who were searching back then, shining a bright flashlight out the car window. And that's when they say they saw what looked like a black glove on the side of the road. So they say it did not look ordinary.
Sure enough, it was a black glove in the desert, and we found another black glove within, what, 10 feet of it.
It also appeared to look like it had blood on it. There was two different colors, and the blood was more towards like the wrist side of the glove, and on the pointer finger it looked like it was ripped. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll call the sheriff's department, see what they do with it. And same thing, we were on the phone with them. They're like, we can't guarantee anybody will come out. You guys can go ahead and leave. We were like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? They're asking for help. We're helping. We're giving it. We're literally saying we found something and nobody's coming. So then we decided, well, let's just call 911.
All right, so after calling at 911, the couple tells me within minutes, investigators were out there on Campbell Avenue helping them out there. And they said that happened at 10 p.m. They did not leave after that questioning with those investigators till 2 a.m. So in the meantime, we also did reach out to the FBI. We have not heard from them regarding this, but we did just hear back from Sheriff Chris Nanos. I just spoke with him on the telephone about 10 minutes ago, and he tells me he can't confirm whether or not that those specific gloves did have blood on them and whether or not they are currently being reviewed as evidence. But he did say if it's something that 911 was called out and the investigator showed up and it was taken as evidence, he can't see why it was not. They were not sent for evidence. Live in the foothills, I'm Monica Garcia. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Monica. And investigators in the Nancy Guthrie case are still appealing to residents in the area tonight. They're asking for any videos or images of vehicles or anything suspicious looking in a specific radius within Campbell Avenue to Ina Road, as you see on the map there, to La Cholla and River Road. That is the radius. Investigators say they're looking for any leads, especially doorbell or surveillance video from the night of January 11th between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. and from January 31st to February 1st between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. They say no detail is too small, and even footage of passing cars could help them in their search. We have a link on our website, KBOA.com, where you can submit your video. Investigators just ask that you include your address and the date and time that video was captured. Once again, here is video of that suspect captured by the doorbell camera at Nancy Guthrie's home that evening. And we've shown it to you many times, we know, but investigators say it has never been more important to share the description of that suspect. They say they believe it is a man between 5'9" and 5'10" tall. And you can see there right in the camera that that person was wearing gloves and a ski mask. And that person was also carrying a black Ozark trail hiker pack and what appeared to be a gun at their waist. Now, if you have any information on the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, you're asked to call 1-800-CALL-FBI.
Moments ago, President Trump weighing in on the Nancy Guthrie case, telling the New York Post he will instruct the Department of Justice to seek the death penalty on the potential captors if the 84-year-old grandmother is not returned safe and sound to her family. President Trump went on to tell the Post they will face, quote, the most severe federal consequences if Nancy is found dead. Which we are a long way from that point, Paul. So just sort of picking up where we left off, a lot of digital threads to pull. And do you think that ultimately it will be digital evidence that will help break the case, or do you believe it will be genetic evidence that will do so?
Ooh,
or both?
tough call. I mean, you know, one digital vector in this thing that we hadn't explored was if the purchase history that Walmart has, and the various Walmart stores have different metrics for how long they retain the video. So let's say it's outside the range of where they retain the video. Their video is going to be very much like the video that she had at her house, which is it's not actual video, it's code. So my point is you may have to do something similar with the, let's say they identify the purchase, but it's 3 months ago, but they only have 2 months worth of video recorded. You might have to do something like they did with Google, which is go in and see if you can retrieve enough of that code to build an image so we can get a look at this person. So that would be very key. And then the other thing, of course, is that with Donald Trump talking, you have to wonder if the case is about to go completely federal. I'm wondering what the jurisdiction would be.
Yeah. Donna, you broke the news that Harvey Levin claims he has a fourth email with someone who claims that he saw Nancy Guthrie south of the border. So a lot of information to sift through.
But he's still asking, like, I want to make sure that you're really involved and you're not making this up.
Right.
Look, Savannah Guthrie went on TV or on her Instagram yesterday, and she is holding out hope. She said, it's not too late to basically give me back my mother and whatever the situation. I don't know how it ends from there. I think it's kind of interesting. They're flying planes in that area, looking for some kind of signals from pacemakers. Now, I think we've had doctors on who've basically said the pacemaker can work without the base. So she could be okay, right, Paul?
Yeah, it does work without it, yeah.
Okay, so, but I guess they can get a ping from a pacemaker?
It's hard, and it's very, very low energy. You got to know what you're looking for. Each pacemaker has an individual footprint. That's what they're looking for, the fingerprint of the pacemaker, but it's a very low energy thing, and that's why they're playing in all of this.
Why didn't they do that sooner?
Right.
Katie, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, I would just say there's frustration on a lot of people's parts, mine included. You know, Tyler Robinson was found the next day, Brown University, 5 days, Luigi Mangione, 5 days. And then you even go to Kohberger, and Kohberger was 47 days. But Richard Kolko of the FBI told me this weekend that the Kohberger case, they actually knew who he was very, very quickly, and the sheriff was tight-lipped in that case, as he should have been. So frustration, and when you talk about Savannah's video, I think of all the ebbs and flows of this and how it's affected the American public and how that must affect her having hope and then having disappointment.
Final thoughts, Donna?
Yeah, I'm just surprised we didn't do some of this sooner. I think that's really interesting. We're watching these helicopters fly over low. Like you said, Paul, they're looking for something specific because more than one person there is going to have a pacemaker. So I really hope that some of these things that they've decided to do later, it's not too late. So let's hope that.
I'd be looking by storage locations. I think if the person lives in the area,
yes,
you'd have to take that shot and see if they have, you know, they wouldn't want to bring her home. Right. And maybe they got a location. Remember the Brown University shooting?
Right.
Yes.
Breaking: Nancy Guthrie was never kidnapped. The shocking truth just came out. At exactly 6:42 a.m., the first post went live. A blurry photo, a worried caption, and a name that would dominate timelines within hours: Nancy Guthrie. Has anyone seen Nancy? She's missing. That was it. No confirmed details. No police statement, just panic spreading faster than facts. By 7:15 a.m., the word kidnapped had already taken over the comments. People weren't asking if something had happened. They were asking who did it. The assumption of abduction formed before investigators had even released a sentence. Nancy had last been seen the previous evening around 9:18 p.m. walking out of a retail plaza. Surveillance footage showed her alone, calm, heading toward her car. There was no visible struggle, no suspicious vehicle circling the lot, nothing dramatic, just a normal exit into the night. Her car was later found parked neatly between two lines. The doors were locked, no shattered glass, no overturned belongings, no physical sign that anything violent had taken place. Her phone, however, was off. And in today's world, a powered-off phone feels like confirmation of the worst. By midday, live streams had begun. Influencers dissected her last social media posts. Strangers claimed she looked worried in old photos. The kidnapping narrative grew legs, arms, and a heartbeat of its own. The story no longer needed proof, it had emotion. When authorities finally spoke, they were careful. They called her a missing adult. They confirmed an investigation. They asked for tips. They did not say kidnapped. That silence created more suspicion than reassurance. Then a quiet detail surfaced, one that didn't fit the viral theory. Cell data revealed her phone had pinged at 11:47 p.m. That was more than 2 hours after she was reportedly last seen leaving the plaza. And the ping wasn't from the parking lot. It came from several miles away. If someone had grabbed her at 9:18 p.m., how did her phone travel calmly across town hours later? Why was that detail barely mentioned in the early posts? Another small fact added to the confusion. Earlier that day, Nancy had withdrawn cash from an ATM, not an alarming amount, but intentional, planned. Kidnapping victims don't usually prepare with cash withdrawals hours before being taken. Unless the evening wasn't what everyone assumed it was. There were still no witnesses reporting screams, no ransom messages, no confirmed threats, no surveillance footage showing force, just a missing woman and a public convinced she had been abducted. By the second night, candlelight vigils were already organized. Posters covered light poles. Strangers cried into cameras demanding answers. But behind closed doors, investigators were asking a different question. What if Nancy wasn't kidnapped? What if the most viral word attached to her name was never supported by evidence at all? Sometimes fear fills gaps faster than truth can. And sometimes, the story people believe is louder than the facts quietly waiting underneath. What investigators uncovered next would challenge everything, not just about Nancy's disappearance, but about how quickly narratives can spiral out of control. Like this video, so more people can follow the unfolding truth. And subscribe because what comes next changes everything. By the third morning, the tone had shifted. Not publicly, online. The kidnapping narrative was still dominating headlines and hashtags. But inside the investigation, something wasn't sitting right. Detectives had finished reviewing extended surveillance footage from surrounding streets near the retail plaza. The clip that originally circulated online ended at 9:18 p.m., showing Nancy walking toward her car. But that wasn't the full recording. At 9:26 p.m., her vehicle was seen exiting the lot, driving normally. No second car following closely. No sudden acceleration. No erratic movement. Just a controlled turn onto the main road. If she had been abducted in the parking lot, it didn't show. The 11:47 p.m. phone ping now mattered more than ever. It placed her device near a quiet residential area several miles away. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood. No reports of screams. No suspicious activity calls that night. No damaged property. Nothing that suggested violence. Then they checked traffic cameras along the route between the plaza and the ping location. Her car appeared again. 10:03 p.m. 10:41 p.m. Each time moving steadily, no visible struggle inside, no swerving, no sudden stops. The theory of a parking lot kidnapping was beginning to unravel. Meanwhile, digital forensics pulled more data from Nancy's phone records. Earlier that afternoon, hours before she was reported missing, she had searched for directions to an unfamiliar address in the same residential area where her phone later pinged. That search was never mentioned in the first viral posts, because it didn't fit the story people had already accepted. Then came something even more surprising. A deleted message thread was recovered from her cloud backup. The contact name wasn't saved, just a number. The conversation had started weeks earlier. The tone wasn't threatening. It wasn't hostile. It was deliberate. Short messages, planned meetups, a discussion about needing space. One message from Nancy stood out. "I can't keep pretending. I need to figure this out." There was no language suggesting fear, no sign she believed she was in danger. Investigators traced the phone number. It belonged to someone who had not been mentioned publicly, someone outside her immediate social circle, someone who, according to records, had not been in contact with police. Yet, when questioned, the individual admitted to meeting Nancy that night voluntarily. They claimed she arrived alone, stayed briefly, and left around 11:30 p.m. That timeline matched the final phone ping. But here, where it became complicated. After 11:47 p.m., the phone went completely dark. No calls, no messages, no movement data. And her car, it wasn't found near that residential address. It was discovered the next morning in a completely different location, which meant one of two things. Either she left that meeting and drove somewhere else willingly, or someone helped her relocate. There were still no physical signs of violence, no forensic evidence inside the vehicle suggesting a struggle, no fingerprints out of place, no blood, no damage. But the narrative had already solidified online. Kidnapped, taken, abducted. The problem was, investigators were no longer convinced that word applied. Then financial records added another layer. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Nancy had made small but unusual purchases: a prepaid debit card, a bus ticket inquiry that was never finalized, and a map printout from a local shipping store. None of those actions screamed panic. They suggested preparation. And preparation changes everything. By the end of day 3, authorities faced a dilemma. If they revealed she had met someone voluntarily and searched directions beforehand, public outrage might shift. The sympathy could fracture. The narrative would collapse. But withholding, it meant allowing a kidnapping theory to grow without solid ground. Behind the scenes, investigators began exploring a possibility that few were ready to hear. What if Nancy wasn't taken? What if she left on her own terms, and something happened afterward? Or worse, what if she never intended to come back at all? The case was no longer a clear-cut abduction. It was becoming something far more complex, a puzzle with missing intent instead of missing evidence. And the next discovery would make the question unavoidable. Was Nancy Guthrie ever in danger? Or was the real mystery why everyone believed she was? Like this video, so more people can see the details that were never highlighted. And subscribe, because the next chapter reveals the turning point that changed the entire investigation. By day 4, investigators made a decision that would quietly reshape the entire case. They pulled footage from a transportation hub nearly 40 miles outside the city, a location connected to the bus ticket inquiry found in Nancy's search history. At 12:32 a.m., hours after her final phone ping, a woman resembling Nancy Guthrie was seen on camera entering the terminal. The image wasn't crystal clear, but the height matched, the build matched, the jacket matched the one she had been wearing earlier that evening. And she was alone. No one pulling her. No one escorting her. No visible distress. She approached a kiosk. The camera angle didn't show the screen, but records later confirmed a ticket purchase made with a prepaid debit card, the same type she had bought days earlier. One way. No checked luggage, just a small shoulder bag. That single frame of footage changed everything. If Nancy had been kidnapped at 9:18 p.m., how was she calmly purchasing a ticket hours later? Investigators traced the bus route. The destination wasn't random. It led to a mid-sized town several states away, a place connected to no immediate family, no close friends, no obvious reason. Except for one detail. The unsaved number in her deleted messages had an area code matching that region. When authorities contacted the individual again, their story shifted. They admitted Nancy had spoken about starting over, about feeling overwhelmed, about needing distance from certain pressures in her life. Still, they insisted they had nothing to do with where she went next. Meanwhile, online, the kidnapping narrative was beginning to fracture. Rumors of the transportation footage leaked. People started asking different questions. Why buy a prepaid card? Why research directions days in advance? Why search bus routes quietly? Then came the final turning point. A transaction alert surfaced from a small convenience store in that out-of-state town, 2 days after Nancy was reported missing. The prepaid debit card had been used to purchase bottled water and a phone charger. Security footage confirmed it. Nancy walked into the store. Alone. Calm. Uninjured. She paid, left, and stepped out of frame. There was no abductor, no struggle, no ransom. The kidnapping narrative that had dominated headlines had no evidence holding it up. But the mystery wasn't over. Because after that transaction, she disappeared again. No further card use. No phone reactivation. No digital trail. It was as if she had intentionally erased herself. Authorities now faced a different reality. This wasn't a confirmed abduction. It was a voluntary departure followed by unknown circumstances. Did she plan to vanish permanently? Did she meet someone after arriving? Did something happen later that had nothing to do with the original panic? The most shocking part wasn't that Nancy had left. It was that the world had built an entire crime story before the facts had a chance to breathe. Kidnapped had become truth without proof. And once that word spreads, it's nearly impossible to pull back. Investigators eventually reclassified the case, not an abduction, not a confirmed crime. An open missing person investigation with voluntary indicators. The public reaction was mixed. Some felt betrayed, others felt relieved. Many wondered how different the narrative would have been if those early assumptions hadn't taken over. In the end, the most powerful twist wasn't about danger in a parking lot. It was about how quickly fear can write a story and how long it takes for facts to rewrite it. But one question still lingers. If Nancy left on purpose, why hasn't she come back? And what really happened after that final frame of footage? If you want the final chapter where we break down the possible endings and theories investigators are still considering, comment final part. Like this video so more people see the full truth behind the headlines. And subscribe, because sometimes the real mystery isn't what happened. It's why we believed something else. Days turned into weeks. The headlines slowed, the hashtags faded, the live stream stopped analyzing grainy footage. But the file labeled Nancy Guthrie remained open. After the convenience store sighting, investigators expanded their search in the surrounding town. They checked motels, rental listings, shelters, rideshare logs. No confirmed check-ins under her name. No verified identification use. No hospital admissions matching her description. It was as if she had stepped carefully into a new life, and then stepped even further off the grid. The prepaid debit card was never used again. No social media logins. No bank transactions. No passport activity. No confirmed employment records. And that raised the biggest question of all. Was this always the plan? Detectives reviewed her digital footprint from the months before she vanished. There were subtle patterns of searches about relocating quietly, articles about starting over anonymously, forums discussing how to reduce digital traces. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, but intentional. Friends described her as overwhelmed, private, thoughtful. Some said she had seemed distant lately. Others insisted she was fine. That's the thing about disappearances like this. They don't always come with obvious warning signs. Authorities eventually addressed the public again. This time, their tone was firm. There was no evidence of kidnapping, no evidence of abduction. They acknowledged the transportation footage and the out-of-state transaction. The narrative had shifted completely. What began as a suspected crime scene in a parking lot had transformed into something far more complex. A voluntary departure followed by silence. Still, investigators couldn't rule out every possibility. Just because someone leaves willingly doesn't guarantee they remain safe. 3 main theories began circulating internally. First, she successfully started over, a clean break, a new identity in a place where no one would recognize her face from viral posts. It has happened before, rare but possible. Second, she intended to start over but encountered trouble after arriving. An accident, an opportunistic crime unrelated to her disappearance narrative, a situation disconnected from the original panic. Third, she changed her mind, not about leaving but about being found. Because the moment her story exploded online, any attempt at anonymity became infinitely harder. Imagine planning a quiet exit, only to see your face plastered across feeds nationwide within hours. That kind of attention changes outcomes. The most unsettling detail wasn't violence. It wasn't a ransom. It wasn't a suspect. It was precision. The prepaid card, the late-night bus ticket, the limited luggage, the deletion of certain message threads. Those aren't signs of chaos. They're signs of intention. In the end, the case forced people to confront something uncomfortable. Sometimes the story we fear most isn't the real one. Sometimes no one was taken. Sometimes no one was chased. Sometimes someone simply walks away. But that doesn't make the silence easier. Because for family, for friends, for those still searching for closure, voluntary or not, unanswered questions still ache. Today, the investigation remains open. Authorities continue to encourage tips. Every now and then, a possible sighting surfaces, none confirmed. And the phrase that once dominated the headlines, kidnapped, now serves as a reminder of how quickly assumptions can become accepted truth. Nancy's disappearance wasn't the dramatic crime story people expected. It became something quieter, more complicated, and in many ways more haunting. Because when someone vanishes by choice, or at least appears to, the mystery doesn't revolve around a villain. It revolves around why. And that's a question that doesn't always come with an answer. If this story made you rethink how quickly narratives spread, comment "Truth Matters." Like this video to help more people see the full timeline. And subscribe, because sometimes the biggest twist is what happened.